When someone is obsessed with you, they could have parasocial interactions or ideologies about the relationship with you that you don't see coming a lot of times until it's too late. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. And one of the things that happens when we can have somebody that's obsessed with us, that means that person is, they deep down, they may desire us, but they have a lot of like ruminative thoughts about us. They can be preoccupied with their desires, their feelings, and things like that when it pertains to us. And I'm not talking about, well, it can occur in someone that's very benign. You don't even know. It can occur in a family member. It can occur in a friend. It can occur in a lover, a former lover, a former teacher even. I've seen this happen with a lot of teachers who obsess and ruminate over students. It could even be in a work colleague, people that you don't even really know or you don't even really talk to like that, but you have but they want to know. They feel like they have the right to know your information, what you're doing, who you're about, who you're with, where you live, and where you stay at. And this is very common now with social media and just in digital media and the ease at which it is to track someone. But a lot of times with obsession, sometimes there could be like a trigger, like we break up, and then I become obsessed with you because I wasn't ready to break up yet, even if I initiated it, right? But I'm talking about not people necessarily like that, but people that you just don't see it coming. And like you thought your relationship was benign, so maybe you get coffee every day, and you felt like it's a benign interaction. We don't really know each other, but we know of each other because I go get coffee and you serve me my coffee or whatever, something like that. But there could be people who have like these ideologies and these narratives and these scripts that are going through their mind, and they're making the relationship. They're distorting reality, and they're making things up in their mind, and it is slow, it's insidious, and so maybe something that you might not see coming with someone who's obsessed with becoming like you, right? And maybe this is a girlfriend and a friend group, and I've actually had this happen a few times where it's like, oh, slowly they start wanting to know where you shop or where you get your makeup from. And then they start, wearing, the clothes that you're wearing and like popping up with your outfits and your shoes and your makeup on, right? And wearing their hair like you. And at first it seemed benign when they were like, oh, I got those shoes that you had. Those were really cute. And things like that. And this is also something that was very common when I used to work with female inmates. For me, they were notorious for doing stuff like this. And it's just like, I have to get that look, and I have to do this, and I have to be just like, and before you know it, you show up and, oh, twin, you've got a twin, right? Because they've copied you from head to toe. But it goes beyond, just wanting to dress like you from head to toe, even though that in itself can be very creepy, very daunting and weird, just to be frank. But, a person could start to think that they could take over your life and that they could be you in every single way. A great example of this was the movie Single White Female with Bridget Fonda. I think that movie kind of lays it out. But also, too, I think The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, if my memory's not mistaken, she thought that she could take over her baby and that she was the mother and things like that. And so there's this sort of delusional thinking that where this person starts to think that like, I can become you by slowly changing these things about myself. And therefore, if I think I can if I think, therefore I am you, right? And it becomes like that. But also other aspects of the parasocial ideologies within the relationships. And again, this could be something um, that can happen is like, and this happens a lot with successful people, is where people start to become jealous and insecure, and they start misinterpreting um, interactions with you. They start becoming angry with you and start to feel like, what did you mean by that? You said something, and they start accusing you of saying or doing something that you did not say or do. And it's because in their mind, they're turning you into a bad person. They don't like the fact that you are achieving, that you're elevating. And so in their mind, that you can't be better than them, but they should have what you have. And so they covet it. And so in their mind, they're going to reframe things, and say that you're a bad person. This also happens in DV relationships. Um, so a good example in a DV relationship is if your partner is a cheater. Your partner is notorious for cheating. However, they bust out one day and they accuse you of being a cheater. They are projecting, right? And they then convince themselves, right? They distance themselves from what they're doing in terms of, I'm not going to own up to my behavior and how I'm doing wrong, but instead I'm going to become hyper vigilant about accusing you of being a cheater. And so they're going to be all up in your social media. They're going to be telling you that you can't leave the house. They're going to be dictating your outfit. They are going to accuse you of being sexually provocative when you had maybe a benign interaction, like you just got change from the cashier at the grocery store and things like that. But in their mind, it's really starting to turn, or they may wake up in the middle of the night and break out into a fight with you because something didn't seem right. And now they, that thought really settled on their mind, and now that they really have time to think about it and sleep on it, here's what it is. But this can also happen with a complete stranger, and while that's a little bit more well known, and we've sort of seen that play out. A good example of this happening with a stranger is the movie Stalking Laura with Brooke Shields and Richard Thomas. Beautiful execution by Richard Thomas, but it explains just how like deranged his thinking got, so much so that he ended up he lost his job over it, was popping up at her house, but making these bold accusations and things like that. And then, he just ended up bringing a weapon to work and really sort of losing it and spiraling out. And a lot of people didn't take him seriously at first, because he was such a nice guy, or he was kind of like he was undercover, right? He was just kind of like a guy who came in and did his job. And then she showed up, and a lot of her complaints were dismissed. And that, while that's a movie about stalking, there was a lot of obsessive thinking that went into that. And she knew him, and they had a work colleague relationship, but he took it there. This kind of stuff happens quite a bit in the workplace, and a lot of times people are none the wiser. They're unassuming how much a person can be invested in you until maybe they spring on some random bit of information, and you're like, how did you know that? Or like, what are you doing? And it's become normalized, or it's become common. I wouldn't say normalized, but it's become common in the workplace. And while they may not be that extreme, it does, as someone who's worked in corrections and have seen people really spiral out of control, both who work there and beyond. It does happen. I'm here to tell you. And not only that, I've seen it happen quite a bit in healthcare. Um, all over. There's a number of jobs I've worked where this has happened. So just let me know what you guys think. Like, comment, follow, and share. Happy Sunday.